Members' motion with no legislative effect. Honorable KWOK Wai-keung will move a motion on firmly uphold the safeguards of the employment priorities for local employees. Honorable Michael TIEN will move an amendment to the moment. On the motion, this council will proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the amendment. Later, I will first call upon Mr. KWOK to speak and move the motion. Then I'll call upon Mr. TIEN to speak, but he may not move the amendment at this stage. The joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. I now call upon Mr. KWOK to speak and move the motion. President, I move that the motion as printed on the agenda, firmly upholding the safeguards of the employment priority for local employees, be passed. Employment is the cornerstone of our society. I thank the Chief Executive for accepting a number of proposals moved by us in the 2025 policy address. That starts with addressing the enhanced supplementary labor scheme. There will be designated types of jobs for the employment. There will be an extension of local recruitment, and employers are required to attend regular job fairs. There is also a more stringent ratio of 2 to 1 based on the overall number of workers in the company. There is also a dedicated hotline, joint operations to combat illegal employment, as well as enhancing training for local workers. These measures show that the government has listened to the aspirations of the public. It shows that they are flexible. The latest unemployment rate is 3.7%, with over 150 people being unemployed. In sectors of construction as well as F&B, the situation is serious. For F&B, the unemployment rate has increased from 6.4 to 6.8%. For the construction industry, with the enhanced measures, the unemployment rate has dropped from 2.2 to 6.9%. From 7.2 to 6.9%. It seems that these sectors are still in the ICU. Some people say that for these two sectors, the high unemployment rate is attributable to a drop in construction as well as lackluster market situation. Yes, sometimes supplementary labor is necessary, but there are abuses. It is found that in some cases, imported workers is used to replace local workers, and local workers have to become casual workers. In addition, some of them have been dismissed as a result. There are also job seekers who cannot find a job. That's the case. Is someone with working hours over 4 weeks, 68 hours, but with the change in situation, he works less. There are also some cleaners, dishwashers, who said that they are no longer working because imported workers have been engaged. So whether it is a shortening in work hours, drop in salary, or job lost, is not something that the employees want to see. I hope that the new stringent measures will be effective in combating abuse. But we need to bear in mind that the type of jobs for imported workers, say for example, engaging junior cook to be the chef, or the using servers as managers in restaurant may happen. I ask the government to vigorously combat these cases. The Chief Executive said on a number of occasions that the principle of according priority to local employees will not change. The situation will be monitored. When needed, adjustments will be made. It seems that the government feels the pulse of the public. They will ensure that the new measures will be effectively implemented. At the same time, there will be a systematic review on the importation of worker policy, as well as its impact on local employment. Employment support will be enhanced. At the same time, there will be a mechanism for freezing labor importation. I've been asked questions about how the line is drawn. I agree that it cannot be cancelled across the board, but at the moment, there is no ceiling on the number. This dampens the confidence of local labor in their job prospects. We hope that even if it's on a lax side, the mechanism for freezing the schemes should be put in place. Adjustments can be made later. In relation to sectors with high unemployment rate, freezing the number of imported labor is necessary. In relation to salary levels, the government has emphasized a number of times that the pay offered to imported labor should not be lower than the median income. However, according to the latest information, for public hygiene, cleaners, rubbish collectors, the median income is 10,890. Compared to the outsourced workers engaged by the FEHD is lower by 20%. According to the latest information for imported workers, for bar vendors, the monthly median wage is 37,800. Divided by 26 days is about $1,400 per day, which is lower than the market rate of about 25,000 to 2,500 to 2,900. It seems that local laborers are forced to lower their rate. In the long run, it is not conducive to boosting consumption. The statistics compiled by the CNSD comes from the information from employers. I think the statistics methodology should be enhanced. A more precise approach should be used to collect employment data. In terms of support, we hope that potential labor force should be released. Collaboration can be made with labor unions. There can be thematic job fairs. For the construction sectors, projects should be approved as soon as possible. Projects can be implemented by phases. Minor works should be included in these works. There should be better health and safety. In relation to combating illegal employment, our suggestion is that the Security Bureau, the Labor and Welfare Bureau, as well as other departments should adopt a multitude of measures. Say, for example, checking suspicious incoming visitors, joint operations, undercover operations, combating on syndicates on false IDs, enhancing publicity, increasing the number of undercover operations. In relation to the construction sector, there should be a more vigorous system put in place. In relation to delivery platform workers, security guards should be able to check ID cards. There should be collaboration with digital platforms to enhance verification of the identity of delivery workers. Improving people's lives is a key area of the policy of this government. Supporting employment is one way. It will be conducive to improving people's lives. This is only a teaser, food for thought. I expect other members to provide valuable views in relation to this motion. I also ask them to support the original motion. Thank you.
I now put the question to you that the motion moved by Mr. Wai-keung be passed. Mr. Michael TIEN. Deputy President, labor policy is closely related to local economy. If there is a shortage of manpower, the pace of economic recovery would be slowed down. However, if we import too many labor, it would affect local employment. It is a difficult balancing act on the part of the government. We must be careful and dynamic in adjusting our policies, including the manning ratio. Now, the policy address announced more stringent manning ratio for 2 job categories. Based on the total number of positions under application, it will be changed to the number of positions applied. The roundtable supports this adjustment. We want the government to take one step further to calculate the manning ratio based on each job type independently. Now, if the unemployment rate for the job category is high and there is difficulty in local recruitment, it should be enhanced to 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. If the unemployment rate is low for that job type, it can be maintained at 2-to-1. Then we can protect local employment while ensuring stable supply of labor for the industries. Is a win-win situation. Now, besides reviewing our policies, we must crack down on irregularities. For example, there was a case which was found to be substantiated. The company applied for importation of labor with no local recruitment difficulties, and they fired local workers after importing labor. And they even withhold wages for the imported labor. Now, the roundtable called for stringent enforcement on these irregularities. But I don't want the scale to swing to tip to the other end. After importation of labor, some employers may be wary of firing these workers based on legit reasons, like poor work performance, because they are afraid that the workers would complain against them. So we have to be careful. On one hand, we must enforce the law stringently. On the other, we have to be mindful of the genuine reason of termination of contracts. So we have to review all these reasons. Now, you may find it strange to hear the above words from me. I myself am a businessman. I'm an employer myself. I said the above because I am fair. There are problems on both sides. Now, for so many years, we have been pivoting towards one side of the issues. Now we are emerging from governance to stability, and we are focusing on economic development. So on that premise, I hope the public will understand that it is natural for entrepreneurs to look for hardworking labor. That's why they prefer imported workers. However, we are a civic society. No matter how bad we want to pursue economic development, we have to maintain stability in society. I'm also a member directly elected from the geographic constituency. Many people ask me to speak on their behalf, so that's why I moved this amendment today. I hope employers will understand where I'm coming from and support my positions. I so submit.
Secretary for Labor and Welfare. Mr. Deputy, I thank Mr. Wai-keung for his motion and Mr. Michael TIEN for his amendment, so that we have this opportunity to share ideas and members can make suggestions about labor issues which are top of mind. I will listen to members' views, and I will also elaborate on the government's measures to put local workers first in importing workers. Our labor policy has always been focusing on developing the local workforce. Importing workers is a supplementary measure. The population is aging, we're short of workers. So while we put local workers first, we strengthen the mechanism to bring in labor. In 2023, we had the special scheme to bring in care home workers. We also had sector-specific labor import schemes for the construction sector and the transport sector. And then we also had the enhanced supplementary labor scheme. So based on the situation across industries, we allowed employers to bring in a moderate number of outside workers to meet the shortage of workers. That's to support Hong Kong's economy and social development. All these labor import schemes have requirements, and they do protect the employment of local workers. Employers trying to import workers must do local hiring at the median monthly wage. They have to give priority to qualified local workers. It's only when those local hiring exercises don't work that the employers can import workers. And these employers have to sign standard employment contracts with the imported workers, and they have to pay those imported workers based on the median monthly wage. This is to make sure that the imported workers do not become cheap labor, undercutting local workers. And there is also the manning ratio for employers. Employers have to hire 2 local workers for every imported worker. The government has been vigorous in vetting every labor import application, and it's only when we establish that the employers struggle to hire local workers that we allow those employers to bring in outside workers. Now, on the enhanced supplementary labor scheme, the Labor Department does preliminary vetting for each job position and then looks at the hiring requirements. This is to make sure that employers actually offer reasonable terms and the pay is at least at the median monthly wage. After the preliminary vetting, the employer will have to engage in 4 weeks of local open recruitment. They have to meet the requirements about the local recruitment interviews. This is to make sure that local workers are the first to fill those vacancies. The Labor Department will also do job matching. They refer job seekers to employers, and the vacancies are shared with members of the Labor Advisory Board, as well as the trade unions and training bodies to make sure they can refer suitable job seekers to those positions. After the employers complete the local hiring process, they have to tell the Labor Department how things went. Now, for every unsuccessful job seeker, the Labor Department will reach out to them to find out how things went at the interview, to make sure whether the job requirements were reasonable and whether what the employer said were in line with the job ad. The Labor Department will strictly implement the requirements about safeguarding the employment priority of local workers. For local employers who breach the requirements about local hiring or importing workers to replace local workers, we adopt a zero-tolerance approach. If there's enough evidence, we will apply administrative sanctions and we will bar those employers from importing workers for up to 2 years. The Security Bureau and the relevant departments will enforce the law vigorously to crack down on illegal workers to protect local workers. Last month, the chief executive delivered his policy address and he announced targeted measures to crack down on illegal workers and protecting local workers. We will keep in view the local labor landscape and review the implementation of various measures. We will put local workers first. The Undersecretary for Security and I will listen carefully to member speeches and then we will give a reply at the conclusion and so submit.
Mr. Chen Builong. Thank you, Deputy President. I thank Mr. Wai-keung for moving this motion today. In recent years, there is an acute shortage of manpower, bringing challenges to different trades. The government has stepped up the supplementary labor scheme to supplement the manpower for industries. However, we must premise upon the protection of local employment. That's the principle we need to adhere to all the time. However, a small number of employers have abused the system and hurt the local employment of local residents. They even drive a chasm between local workers and imported workers. We need to be mindful of their situation. A series of measures to protect local employment have been raised in the policy address. I welcome them. The manning ratio for importing workers for junior cooks and waiters have been tightened to prioritize local employment. The chief executive said the government would dynamically review the impacts on the labor markets by the importation of labor. That we must be dynamic at all the steps from prevention to implementation to protect local workers. In terms of manpower projection, the manpower projection report is an important tool for assessing the manpower demand and supply situation of different trades. It is an important basis for the government's policies. However, as affected by geopolitical tension and technology advancement, the landscape changes rapidly. The current report has a lifespan of 5 years. There will also be interim updates. However, based on the rapid changes in the labor market, the government should update the report more frequently and shorten the cycle to allow the government to grasp the dynamic situation more accurately. It will lead to a more accurate manpower projection and allow the government to identify the shortage or gap of manpower in various trades more accurately so that the resources can be allocated more effectively. On importation of labor, I suggest the government conduct more consultation with the trade and also use quantifiable indexes like unemployment rates and underemployment rates as basis to dynamically adjust the quota. For positions with oversupply of labor, there should be a mechanism to suspend or freeze the importation of labor. While studying how to meet the trade's manpower need, we need to ensure that these schemes are being used to plug the manpower gap rather to replace the local workers. After importation of labor, the government must strengthen inspection and oversight. The government must conduct a more stringent inspection on the authenticity of the documents submitted by employers and enforce on complaints. And also the government should study enhancing the deterrence effect of the penalty system to prevent abuse. By conducting dynamic review and management on the importation schemes, we can ensure that there are sufficient manpower for local trades and also protect the employment opportunities of local workers. I hope the government would continue to strike a balance between the needs of workers and employers to prevent abuse and ensure healthy development of the labor market. Now, illegal employment is now a problem in many trades. There was a case where a ride-hailing vehicle driver is from the mainland, and there are also a lot of advertisements on recruitment of illegal workers on the red note to conduct illegal employment in Hong Kong. Now, I support the policy address proposal to establish an interdepartmental workforce on cracking down on illegal employment. We need to continue to enhance our monitoring and enforcement system and make use of technology to enhance the government's ability to detect cases. For example, we need to collaborate with social media platforms to remove advertisements to recruit illegal workers. With these, we can protect the employment opportunities of local workers. Dr. Wai-keung. Deputy President, I thank Mr. Wai-keung for moving the original motion and Mr. Michael TIEN for his amendment. This is an important issue in relation to labor policy and societal development. I support the Chief Executive's promise to adhere to protection of local workers and also strengthen monitoring of various importation schemes rather than stopping these schemes across the board. The government has the responsibility to review the situation and adjust the policies dynamically to protect local workers while ensuring stable growth of the economy. We need to understand the complexity of the local labor market. We can't tar every trade with a single brush. There are different needs from different trades. On one hand, the unemployment rate is rising. According to the CNSD, the latest unemployment rate has been increased mildly to 3.7%. The situation in the construction industry is especially worrying. For some job types, the unemployment rate is as high as 8.3%. According to the 2023 Manpower Projection Report, by 2028, the manpower gap in Hong Kong will be expanded to 180,000 workers. Many trades are facing structural manpower shortage. For example, construction industry, the manpower gap will increase from 15,000 in 2023 to 45,000 to 55,000 by 2028. Now, the Construction Industry Council has conducted a latest survey. The survey shows that the demand-supply gap for labor is 7%. Now, for example, for certain job types, for electrician, the gap is 10%. It shows that it is a structural issue rather than a cyclical issue. Importation of appropriate number of workers is important and essential for the operation of society. We shouldn't blame the imported workers as scapegoat. Nor should we establish a mechanism to freeze labor importation or drastically change our policy. According to survey, under the ESLS, only 25,000 imported workers have come to Hong Kong to work via this scheme, accounting for less than 1% of the total labor force. Now, this is an extremely small percentage. We can't link it with the fluctuations with economy. And also, there are varying needs in various trades. For example, the construction industry, every segment is closely linked. If there is disruption at a certain segment because of manpower shortage, it would disrupt the entire supply chain, and it may lead to significant overrunning of costs and delay. And society will have to pay a cost for that. Now, under the ESLS, employers cannot reject local workers without reasonable grounds. This may lead to labor dispute. Most employers are law compliant. Employers and employees should be working together, hand in hand. By blaming the employers, it may hurt the overall benefit of both parties. Now, the government must keep in touch with all the trades and establish a flexible importation scheme for all trades and dynamically adjust the quota and be stringent with the process to ensure stable supply of labor. Now, we must help the employers and employees to move away from the confrontational attitude. We must identify manpower situation changes in various trades based on survey and allocate educational resources to nurture talents for each industry, covering high, medium, and low-end technical talents. We should encourage corporates to invest more to nurture local workers. While protecting the employment opportunities of local workers, we must maintain the robustness of our economy. Thank you.
Dr. Tan Yue-hung. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. The enhanced supplementary labor scheme is supposed to meet manpower shortages. But we're seeing more and more imported workers, and the local jobless rate is going up, especially for the construction sector and the catering sector. So this warrants a full review of all labor import schemes. Local workers struggle to find a job. They're working fewer hours and there are bogus job ads. We have to do something about that. So here are my suggestions. First, we need a dynamic approach to monitoring and adjusting the number of imported workers. We need a more transparent approach to the data on jobless rate and the workers. We need a more targeted approach to meet market demand. We should require enterprises to report the numbers of imported workers. Trade unions should be involved in monitoring. So we have a multilateral participation in the monitoring. We need a scientific approach to the situation, so that permanent workers don't become casual workers. There are peak seasons and slow seasons for the catering sector, for example. There is wastage during slow seasons, but there are peak seasons. We should guard against massive layoffs because of the seasonal nature of those industries. This is to ensure sustainable labor supply for those sectors. And we also have to monitor those local hiring and look out for loopholes. And we have to assess whether the refusal of employers to take on board workers makes sense, so that employers cannot just exploit the loopholes and gray areas to turn away job seekers. For bogus local hiring, we should crack down on such behavior. We can do a blacklist, and we need stiffer penalties. Now, for labor import schemes, employers may hire local workers as casual workers. The government said it would take a risk-based approach. Employers will have to submit data on imported and local workers, but the government hasn't said anything on the interval of submission. The Labor Department should consider mandating regular submission of data on local and imported workers. We need an open database. Everyone can see in the database. We can monitor it so that employers don't just replace local workers with imported workers. Now, we need a system to protect whistleblowers. We need a hotline for people to report abuse in the labor import scheme. There should be an anonymous reporting system so that the whistleblowers won't get laid off for speaking up. Now, there were imported workers who were ripped off by labor service and agencies, and there were also parallel contracts. And there were also cases of unfair dismissal. And those workers did not get their money back. So we need supervision and regulation of labor service agencies too. So that's why templates can make a difference, and we should set up arbitration to deal with such disputes. Now, for law-breaking intermediaries and employers, they should be penalized, and we should blacklist them so that we stop such cases at source. As Sosa made, I support the motion. Dr. Frankie Ngan. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Our job loss rate has been going up and up. From June to August, the job loss rate was at 3.7%. 151,000 people were out of work, and that's a record high since December 2022. The construction and F&B sectors are hit particularly hard. Now, there are school leavers entering the job market. Illegal workers are making life harder for local workers. At the district level, people have told us that imported workers are taking away the jobs from locals. The DAB has pointed out time and again the many loopholes with the labor import scheme, bogus local hiring, parallel contracts, illegal workers. We made 7 suggestions. The government should look at the employment and jobless rate of each industry and dynamically adjust the quota. When necessary, we should stop particular sectors from imported workers and crack down hard on illegal workers. Some sectors, such as minibus drivers and lift and escalator repair workers, as well as care workers at care homes for seniors, are faced with an acute shortage of workers, and that leads to suspension in service or delays in service. Quality suffers. Other industries suffer from serious succession problems. Our local manpower cannot meet the needs right away, so that warrants importing workers. Still, importing workers should be seen as an expedient, a short-term measure. In the long term, we need local manpower planning and training. We should fix those loopholes in the system. That's how we truly put local workers first. Last month, the Labor Department rejected an application for imported workers because that company failed to provide reasonable grounds for refusing the application of local job seekers. That shows the government was on the initiative in investigating abuse. The penalties are real. The law was enforced. I look forward to more such investigations to reassure people about the system. Our labor import policy is to put local workers first. Jobs go to our local workers first. When local hiring cannot meet those gaps, and then we bring in outside workers. The administrative sanction carries a deterrent effect, so that employers taking part in the enhanced supplementary labor scheme stays on the strict and narrow. Now, for repeat offenders, we need stiffer penalties. Let's do fines and even cancel their quota so that we keep the policy fair and effective. Say an employer gets the green light for importing workers. Even then, the government should review the ratio of local versus imported workers. Once again, the DAB calls on the government to take a post-specific approach. Employers shouldn't be able to use different workers in different posts to meet the target. We need dynamic adjustment to the quota. So for sectors with less of a labor manpower shortage, they should get fewer spots for bringing in workers. Some employers split existing posts into several casual posts, and they can still meet the 35-hour rule under the Labor Department. That is not protecting local workers. On illegal workers, I'm grateful to the Security Bureau and the Immigration Department. Almost daily, there were investigations, arrests were made of suspected illegal workers, and the employers allegedly hiring illegal workers. I hope that with this interdepartmental task force, we can have more frequent inspections. We need streamlined reporting mechanisms. Let's step up cross-departmental collaboration, and let's do information sharing to curb illegal employment. This is how we can ensure order in the labor market. The DAB support the government's work on ensuring jobs go to local workers first. We should vet every labor import scheme based on objective data. Let's look at the labor shortage in deciding whether to grant the application. When the labor crunch is not so serious, we should put local workers first so that we plug the loopholes. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Lam Chen-sing. Everyone's eyes are on our jobless rate in the middle and the end of each month. The jobless rate goes up, so some jobless people try to sign up as delivery workers for food platforms, but there are many applications, so they struggle to land a job. Now, for junior cooks and servers, the manning ratio has to be job post specific so that more jobs will stay for locals. The secretary told us it's only the middle of next year that they will review the ESLS, but I call on the government to keep reviewing the situation. And if the jobless rate goes up further, we should be reviewing the policy sooner. And this stricter approach with junior cooks and servers should be extended to other jobs. Or we can simply deal with the backlogged importation applications and pause those fresh applications, or we can put a cap on certain industries to mitigate the impact for workers. Now, as a broader point, we have not just the ESLS, we also have a range of talent admission schemes. There are many people coming in under those talent schemes and their dependents. Let's look at the number of people who can work and assuming they can work all of them, there will be 100,000 people, and our manpower gap is only 180,000. Now we have a number of admission schemes, such as the scheme specifically for mainland talent, and then we also have the dependents of the top talent pass scheme. Those people take up jobs paying $10,000 to $20,000 per month. Those are jobs for fresh graduates. So let's think about this for a moment. Do we already have enough people, given the top talent and their dependent, or are overqualified people taking up our jobs? If that is the case, we should calibrate our policies and we should bring in restrictions for certain industries. We need continuous review and adjustments to safeguard employment for local workers. The motion also mentions illegal workers. 2 years ago, when we just put COVID behind us, when normal life was back, now an association under the HKFLU has told us about some people referring mainland cleaners to Hong Kong for household cleanup. And then you have household home renovation drivers, private cooks, illegal workers are taking up work in these areas. I support the establishment of the Interdepartmental Task Force Against Illegal Employment. Now, for home renovation workers or illegal workers, we need a multi-pronged approach to crack down on them. Now, when the sector-specific unemployment rate is 8% for renovation workers, many locals are out of work. So we should do something. Now, for ads on mainland social media platforms, we should work with mainland government. We should crack down on those ads so that the relevant authorities can take down those ads. Besides, home renovation involving illegal employment is also more covert in nature, so we need new ways to enforce the law. We should be looking at updating our guidelines. We should help property management staff to identify illegal workers. Let's do visitor registration. That's how we can crack down on illegal workers. The government should also redouble its efforts to inspect premises suspected of hiring illegal workers. On penalties, in 2021, there was a legislative amendment stiffening the penalties for hiring illegal workers, maximum $500,000 and jail terms of 10 years. But illegal employment as a problem has worsened recently. Penalties actually handed down in the past were way below the maximum penalty. Is that enough of a deterrent? Shouldn't we review the penalties? This calls for a full review. I support the motion.
Mr. Zhao Xiuchong. Deputy President, protecting the prioritizing local employment is a policy we need to adhere to. Now, since the ESLS, a total of 100,000 quota have been granted under these schemes, and 75,000 quotas have been granted under the ESLS alone. Now, many local workers told me that they think this affects their income and employment, especially grassroots workers in the catering business. Since the unemployment rate is as high as 6.4% in the industry, the business is bad and there is less demand in manpower in the sector. Shouldn't the importation scheme be frozen to protect local employment? Now, the new policy address announced the tightened manning ratio for junior cooks and waiters and an additional 2 more weeks of local employment. And also, the calculation would be based on the number of local employees in the same jobs. But the effect of the adjustments is immediate. I believe that this will provide more job opportunities for local workers. We need to extend the arrangements to more than these 2 job categories. Other jobs should have the same arrangements. Now, the purpose of importation of workers is to plug the gap of manpower in the short term. To strike a balance, we need to be targeted and dynamically adjust and dynamically review the impacts on the local employment market. When it affects the local employment market, we need to put a stop to the importation scheme. Now, manpower projection is useful, but there is a delay in terms of the data. So we need to conduct more updated survey on the income, employment situation, as well as the situation of abuse in various importation schemes so as to adjust the policies dynamically. If the comprehensive review reveals that the importation of labor would hurt the employment of local labor, we need to adjust the scheme or even suspend the scheme. For example, during a 3-month observation period, no new applications should be entertained. The government should only reopen the application after monitoring the situation for a period of time. Now, many workers in the catering business complain that they are being replaced by imported workers, and there are substantiated cases of abuse. Now, there are some 33,700 quotas granted. If all quotas are being used, it will help plug the gap already. There are still some 23,800 cases pending for the catering business. If most of these applications are approved, there will be abundant supply of workers in the industry. There is condition to pause or suspend the importation scheme for catering sector. We should only reopen the application after considering the situation. Now, after dynamic situation, if the government considers other industries to have sufficient labor supply, we should also pause the importation schemes for them. I support the motion and the amendment. Mr. Michael TIEN, Deputy President, prioritizing local employment is not just a slogan. When I visit my constituency, many people told me that they want the government to review and adjust the importation policies. They are impatient to see it happening. Now, with the 26 job common post relaxed, with importation of labor started in 2023, the 2-year period promised by the government has passed. So like Mr. Zhao Sichong said, maybe we should pause the importation scheme and wait for the results of the review. Now, the Labor Department has a very low success rate of referral. Among 5,000, only 400 cases were matched. Is it because the employees are picky, or is it because employers are just conducting bogus recruitment? Now, many workers told me that the employers rejected them because they are older than others. Now, the employers can afford to be picky because there is unlimited supply through supplementary labor scheme. Those imported workers are younger, more hardworking, and they are willing to suffer unfair treatment and very low wages. For example, with junior cook or junior waiters' wages, they double up as managers and chefs. Now, just look at this board. There are some universal posts. Now, the title of the job is waiter, but the task include maintenance and repair. There are so many loopholes. Our local workers can compete with others, but we need the landscape to be fair. If there are imported workers who voluntarily or involuntarily being subjected to abuse, then it will hurt the local employment. And like the media said, it is very difficult to prosecute these cases. Now, according to the verbal question yesterday, there were 68 investigations and only one case of employer abusing the system was substantiated. The employers can make use of various reasons to fire an employee, like poor work performance and others. Some employers even use other methods to force the employees to quit themselves. They move them around. If a worker lives in Tin Shui Wai, I can ask him to come to work in Wan Chai. Then they will be forced to quit. So these cases are hard to investigate. It is even more difficult to prove arrear of wages. They need to go to court, and the employers are not afraid of being blacklisted. So there are indeed a lot of loopholes, and it is very difficult to eradicate these loopholes. So the only way forward is to reduce the number of quota. Only then can we minimize the adverse impacts on local employment, set a cap, adjust the ratio from 2 to 1 to 3 to 1, or even 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. Strengthen law enforcement and impose steeper penalty. Now, besides prohibiting new application, can we impose an administrative fine on the wrongdoers? I'm also perplexed with one point. Now, there are 14 designated intermediaries in the mainland. Why can't they employ the employees directly? Many gray areas arise from intermediaries. Now, besides the reviewing and setting a cap and adjusting the manning ratio, shouldn't we ask the 14 designated intermediaries to hire workers directly? The more layers there are, the more gray areas. Mr. Tony Chair, Deputy President, I'm a staunch supporter of privatizing local employment. Now, my election platform back in 2021 was to reform the government's procurement and tendering system. Reasonable consultancy fees should be paid to local landscape engineering consultancy firms to privatize local employment. Now, my first member motion moved in 2022 was about introducing elements to support local employment. For example, avoiding binding tender and giving more weighting to local employment to support the local developments of startups and businesses. Now, I also support prioritizing local employment. However, different sectors, including the labor sector, must face the reality that with the worsening situation of aging population and declining birth rate, manpower is declining. In many industries, there is insufficient manpower supply and aging of labor force. It is impossible to turn around the situation in the short to medium term. Now, besides encouraging parents to give birth, we should also nurture talents and use technology to reduce demand for manpower. However, Hong Kong is a free economy. We are a metropolitan. We are attracting talents from overseas, and we need to import labor in a targeted manner to supplement the manpower gap in certain industries. Otherwise, it would hurt the competitiveness and the robustness of certain industries. In the end, that would hurt the employment prospects of local workers as well. Now, with the declining number of private and public and capital work projects, the unemployment rate in construction industry has been rising. At the same time, there are contractors complaining that they can't hire sufficient workers for certain jobs. Now, there are some who are suspicious of their intention. Are these employers looking for cheaper labor? However, if you take into account the training fees and also the accommodation fee, it is not necessarily cheaper than local workers. Now, age is another matter. Imported workers are usually younger and more productive than local workers. I understand that in recent years, the construction industry has been very proactively nurturing and attracting young blood to join the trade. Many measures have been launched by the government to help aged and single-skilled workers to expand their skill set. Technologies and new building methods have been introduced. For example, MIC, with a view to reducing the demand for manpower and manual labor. But that cannot completely offset the decline in supply of labor and the reluctance of young people to join the trade. Now, this is also evident in the property management sector. Some sectors Some people think that security guard and also cleaning jobs are the safety net for local workers, so they oppose importation of labor for the property management sector. However, despite the economic downturn, many property management companies still have difficulties hiring workers. Many security guards are 60 or even 70 years old. It is not beneficial for the trade's transformation. Now, the labor sector may ask, why don't you offer a higher wage to attract workers? But they're also opposed to raising the property management fee. That's why I support the targeted importation of labor for specific trades under the framework of a quota. At the same time, I support cracking down hard on illegal employment and illegal workers, but we shouldn't stop the schemes arbitrarily. I also submit to support the motion and the amendments.
Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. A lot of people in this council keep saying that the Liberal Party is always on the opposite side of the labor sector representatives. I think that's normal. The LegCo has members over a wide spectrum, so that is normal. Our party will support this motion because ensuring employment priority to local workers is important to us. Yes, we want to boost our economy. It doesn't matter how rich some people are, but if the majority of Hong Kong people don't have stable employment and lives, it's not going to end well. So we think it is important to accord priority to local employees. As to how to combat illegal workers, we see that it's got more rampant. We ask law enforcement agencies and the Security Bureau to step up their efforts. I have met with the Director for Immigration with some other representatives. They've given us more information. They maintain a close liaison with us. They asked us to give them the intelligence. Their operation have been proved to be effective. When inspections are undertaken, well, illegal workers will be caught. Having said that priority should be given to local employees, we must bear in mind still that there is an aging population here. Currently, 1 out of 4 people will be over the age of 65. In about 4 years, 1 out of 3 will be above the age of 65. Without imported labor, I'm afraid that we will turn into Japan when the worsening situation started 10 years ago. There is an aging population in Japan. Without imported labor, economic development will suffer. Importation of labor is a proper solution. I agree that the approach should not be across the board. Different sectors have different needs. An across-the-board approach will not be good for Hong Kong's economic development. But how do we ensure employment priority for local workers? I think a quota system will work. Well, if there is an increasing unemployment rate for a certain sector, then we'll look into it. I recall that in September last year, for construction workers, the importation scheme was suspended. We need a different approach for the F&B sector. Using a quota system, if we see that there is an increasing unemployment rate for a certain sector, perhaps the manning ratio will be changed from 2 to 1 to 3 or 4 to 1. In this way, we can ensure priority to local employees. But let me once again say that workers coming from the GBA should be cherished. Hong Kong's growth momentum depends on them. Talents are important to us, but they may not take up elementary posts, not manual work or manual jobs. We hear complaints about poor service in restaurants or shops. But in recent days, it seems that the situation has improved because they are imported workers. They cherish their jobs. And when local workers see an improvement, see an example of good service provided, they will improve theirs. So we need to welcome imported labourers as well. Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. The Liberal Party supports the principle of employment priority given to local employees, but we have a low birth rate and an aging population. We have a shrinking labor force. And in general, youngsters have higher education level. They're not interested in manual jobs or elementary posts. For some sectors, they face long-term recruitment difficulties. It's very difficult for them to sustain their business, let alone supporting Hong Kong's development. For some sectors, the situation has improved, but for minibus drivers and other sectors, it stays the same. On a number of occasions, I have already said that, for 3 minibus drivers, the total age is over 100. In general, the average age is over 60. For crew members on vessels, the average age is also 7 or 80. There is a succession gap. As a result, practitioners will have to keep working, but they will have to retire one day. So extending the retirement age cannot solve the problem. It also causes safety hazards. So for the shipping industry and the minibus trade, they suffer from a succession problem. And in relation to the third runway project, there is an increase in demand for manpower. So even with good hardware, we won't be able to meet the manpower demand. So the government should face the problem face on. I think that in June 2023, the administration rolled out the improved supplementary labor scheme covering transportation as well as aviation. A total of 8,000 imported workers are allowed to work in Hong Kong. At the end of June, in addition to importation schemes for technical posts, on aviation and shipping, the situation has improved. Importation of labor improved the employment situation for sectors. With imported drivers, the minibus trade has seen that more routes, the operation of more routes are maintained. So I hope that the government will release the remaining quota so that we see an improvement in service. I would like to say that importation of labor is not to save cost. Employers have to pay imported workers not lower than the median wage to imported workers. They have to pay $400 per month towards the employees' retraining fund. They have to provide accommodation. They have to go through the renewal procedure. Of course, there is priority given to local workers. The government should provide support in relation to jobs that requires long-term training. Before there was importation of drivers, some trade associations liaised with the government trying to find a solution to recruit more drivers. In the end, they had to turn to importation of labor. We understand that it should not be across-the-board freezing of importation. Different sectors are subject to different factors, and the situation for them are different. For professional drivers in the past decade or so, there has been manpower shortage. I support the government's efforts to combat against illegal employers. It is not easy for an employer to apply to have an imported worker to work in Hong Kong. So those who don't comply with the law should face a heavy penalty. I so speak. Mr. So Chung Wing. Madam Deputy, starting from 2020, we have seen a shrinking labor force. In 2023, there is a shortage of about 50,000 workers. Human labor resources is an important support for our economic development. In 2023, the government rolled out its enhanced supplementary labor scheme to boost our economy. At that time, that was economic growth. And the exodus of people out of Hong Kong has abated. However, the unemployment rate for certain sectors, say for example construction and F&B, is still acute. I thank Mr. KWOK for moving the original motion, and I also thank Mr. Tien for moving the amendment. They gave us an opportunity to discuss this topic. In the second quarter of this year, the GDP has registered a growth of 3.1%. However, the latest unemployment rate has also increased to 3.7%. It's the new high since November 2022. For the construction sector, the unemployment rate is 6.9%. For F&B sector, is as high as 6.8%, which is much higher than the overall unemployment rate. It shows that for certain sectors, there is a high unemployment rate. At the same time, we see illegal workers or illegal dismissal by employers of local employees. It is worrying. The administration explained that this slight increase in unemployment rate is a result of graduates entering the labor market. The total number of employment has increased. The government will step up its retraining work and crack down heavily on illegal workers and abuse of importation of labor. Employment opportunity for local workers will be protected. I support priority being given to local employees. At the same time, we have to make sure that local and priority given to local employees will go hand in hand with economic development. Measures to protect employment opportunities for local employees should be rolled out at the same time as measures to boost our economy. I suggest to the government that measures should be rolled out to boost consumption. There should be measures to encourage investment to create job opportunities. The government should also enhance employment retraining, taking into account the latest changes in the labor market. Some trades are being phased out, but there are no new jobs being created. In addition, there is smart initiatives as well as automation of jobs. The government should devote resources to help the labor force adapt to changes of employment requirements. In the first half of next year, a review will be conducted on the enhanced supplementary labor scheme. In addition to the overall review, they should consider introducing an adjustment mechanism. Any move should not be an across the board. There should be a dynamic adjustment of quota of labor importation by trades. I so speak. Thank you.
Mr. Ovi Chen. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I support Mr. KWOK Wai-keung's motion on firmly upholding the safeguarding the employment priority of local employees. In April this year, we had a debate on enhancing the importation of workers. Putting local workers first is positive for local businesses. Boosting local consumption means we cannot over-rely on outside workers because what they earn will go back to their home countries or home cities. The money leaves our city. So putting local workers first is also good for local businesses, seen in that light. And we have come into contact with frontline workers. They have been turned into casual workers, or some even lost their jobs. So just like what Mr. Wai-keung said, we need a mechanism to freeze labor import schemes, especially for sectors with higher jobless rates. We have to crack down hard on illegal workers too. We did not go into much depth on this point back in April, but this problem has worsened. And other members have highlighted this issue too. So we have met with the Security Bureau and other departments about illegal employment. When I was at the street booth, I saw something. Someone who was probably an illegal worker came to me. This person said they didn't get paid. I asked for a contract. This person said no. And this person had no proof of employment. So I went to the police station with this person. We also went to the labor department. But this person disappeared afterwards. So I suspect it was a case of an illegal worker who was exploited. So I know the Security Bureau is analyzing intelligence and they will take action. So I hope they can keep up the effort. Employers and their workers are not at each other's throat. They work together in good times and bad times, and they can achieve a win-win outcome. My office and other stakeholders co-organized a job fair in New Territories West. So we did live streaming. We shared job vacancies online through live streaming so that job seekers could get an idea of the jobs available. We hope this is a way that we can connect jobs with job seekers. So on the spot, we told people about the vacancies. The information was also shared online, and this was well received across sectors. This model can be replicated elsewhere too. When we visited the mainland, they did live streaming to tell people about job vacancies. The policy address this year has discussed local unemployment. Employers are required to do local hiring for 6 weeks instead of 4. Those employers also have to go to the physical job fairs of the Labor Department just to make sure the local hiring of those employers is not simply going through the motions. I hope those employers can try the model I just mentioned, live streaming, that is, so that we can be more transparent about the job vacancies. And when the need arises, I'm happy to tell people about how this live streaming model works. I also admit I support the motion and the amendment. Mr. Kingsley Wong. Thank you, Madam Deputy. The government, businesses, and the labor sector may not see eye to eye on labor import schemes, but on putting local workers first, cracking down on illegal workers, we are all on the same page. I thank Mr. Peter Xu and the Liberal Party for supporting Mr. KWOK Wai-keung's motion on labor. This shows that we may come from different backgrounds. In this term of Legislative Council, we're all pragmatic. The policy address proposes a new arrangement for junior cooks and servers. So there will be a new arrangement for the manning ratio of 2:1. The Security Bureau also set up the Interdepartmental Task Force against illegal employment. This shows the government is responsive to calls for safeguarding the employment priority of local workers. But we still have to step up the measures. The jobless rate is at 3.7%, or 151,000 people, and that's an extra 40,000 people from before. Now for retail, it's 6.8%, and for catering and construction, the unemployment rate is 6.8 or 7.9, 6.8 or 6.9%, and 85,000 approvals were given to import workers. And that's making it much harder for job seekers in catering and construction. Now we were told about mobility at the grassroots, so servers can become security guards, but we have also stopped enforcing the exclusion list for the 26 low-skilled jobs. So that means local workers in those positions have to compete with imported workers. And there's also pressure on wages. For toilet cleaners, the median wage is $10,890, and that's 40% lower than the wages for FEHD contractors, because imported workers can take the jobs of locals. Now for intermediaries, I've noticed the job ads. A certain restaurant chain requires men, they have to take orders. They also have to repair the plumbing and air conditioners. So the Labor Department does not understand what the employers are looking for. So those imported servers come in. They don't just work as servers. They also work as electricians and plumbers. So local plumbers and electricians are also affected. So there are employers crying up wine but selling vinegar. The Labor Department should take note. We should be clear about what we really need in terms of talent. We granted more than 260,000 applications under various talent schemes. We should be delving into those figures. Take the Top Talent Pass scheme. Over 2 years, we granted 86,000 applications. By the end of July this year, only 8,500 people were renewed. 400 or so of them earned less than $20,000 per month. So there's a huge gap between expectations and what people really earn. UGC figures show that our 8 UGC-funded universities produced graduates each year. Their average pay was less than $20,000. So the government needs to be the gatekeeper so that imported workers don't take jobs away from local graduates and local workers. Businesses and the labor sector agree that we should put local workers first in importing workers. This is a community consensus. The government is primarily responsible for running Hong Kong. We expect the government to take responsibility to act as a gatekeeper. Let's crack down on illegal workers and intermediaries. We should protect blue-collar, white-collar workers and university graduates. I so submit and support the motion of Mr. Wai-keung and the amendment. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I support Mr. Wai-keung's motion on firmly upholding the safeguards of the employment priority of local employees. On protecting local workers, I'm sure we all agree that we should do that. We need jobs for local workers. For workers anywhere, local or outside workers, we need a booming economy. We need all sectors to thrive so that there are jobs for all of them. At different panels, we discussed labor policies. So we wondered if there were sector-specific studies on the needs of those sectors because the labor crunch varies from one sector to the next. We have people here under various talent admission schemes, including the Top Talent Pass scheme. The talent admission schemes and also the labor import schemes are filling the gaps. But what are we really missing? What are we short of? We have overall figures, but do we have a breakdown of the kind of people we need for Hong Kong's future? Let's gather those figures first, and then we decide what kind of workers we bring in. Needs vary from one industry to the next. Maybe we don't even need to bring in outside workers for certain sectors. Action has been taken to crack down on illegal workers. That's good. We learned about that from news reports. That's to protect local workers. Those actions also protect the illegal workers because by working as illegal workers, they work in dangerous settings. We have no idea how competent those illegal workers are. So I support these actions against illegal workers. But then I noticed something else. There's a kind of visa for artists to come here. And because of these actions against illegal workers, these artists who come here for maybe just a day or two, they may be affected. The visa fee has also gone up from $300 to $1,200, and that's a huge expense when an entire band comes here. Some performing groups failed to secure these temporary visas, so they could not come to Hong Kong for cultural events. We have all kinds of labor import schemes. Those workers come here, they get paid. Some of them are performers. There are nationally accredited performers. During the National Day, we had Class A nationally accredited performers in Hong Kong. Exemptions could be granted because National Day events were recognized events. But then at the community level, when we look at the approval and the fees are high. So community groups struggle with those procedures and high fees. So when the government looks at labor import schemes, can we also look at these immigration visas, such as visas for performers? You only have 6-month visas or visas longer than 6 months. Can we have weekly visas at a lower fee, say $200, so that those performers can come here? This can foster cultural exchange between our country and the rest of the world. Hong Kong has our country support and global connections. We're also an East meets West center for cultural exchange. So it makes sense for us to invite more Class A nationally accredited performers or art groups to come here so that they can tell our country story well, and then we can show the best of us to the rest of the world. So submit. Thank you.
Mr. Bill Tang, Deputy President. Now on this motion moved by my colleague Wai-keung, that is firmly upholding the safeguards of the employment priority for local employees. Every time when we debate motion of this sort, we are also conducting a dynamic assessment on our colleagues' positions. So I hope the government will also conduct a dynamic assessment on our labor importation scheme. Now, I'm very surprised that Ms. Jovi Chan told me that Mr. Peter Shiu is going to support a motion. This is really an Easter egg. So let's work together to firmly uphold the safeguards of the employment priority for local employees. Now, as a Legislative Council member, we need to help improve the sense of happiness and gain of the people. Sense of gain, it means that there is a fair reward for the contribution to the economy. That's also the so-called Lion Rock spirit. We have the belief that if we work hard, we can improve our life. So I hope that this motion will be supported by all members unanimously. Now back to my realistic points. Now, Mr. Chris Sun always told us that they will review the ESLS. That will happen early next year. Now, several members, including the written question and my verbal question 2 weeks ago, we asked for the specific data. The reality is businesses are really struggling. The job vacancies available for the Labor Department's referral has dropped significantly. There is also a significant drop in the number of employers participating in the in-person job fair. Now, the numbers have been made clear in the government's reply yesterday and 2 weeks ago. It shows that there are really trades that have difficulties hiring people, but they are also contracting their business. So the job vacancies available is less now. So they want to lower their operating costs by importing labor. There are fewer and fewer job vacancies, and it is more and more difficult for local workers to find a job locally. At the same time, the government is allowing importation of labor. This is really contradicting principles. So we need to focus on the statistics. Now, during my verbal question, Mr. Peter Shiu said that there are fewer candidates looking for a job at the job fair organized by the Labor Department because 90% of the job vacancies are directly matched. And there's also a means of contact provided for those jobs, so the candidates would immediately reach out to the employers rather than wait for the job fairs. So that's why we have been saying that we should invigorate job matching services. We need to allow labor organizations to organize job fairs because they will be very eager to help candidates find a job. It would be best for both parties if job vacancies are matched with candidates rapidly. So I believe that if the government contracts out job placement centers to private organizations, the service quality will be higher with much lower cost. Now, I urge local employers to protect local employment and also crack down on illegal employment. And I also urge local employees to refuse receiving wages with cash. Now, when there are labor disputes, the employers would tell the labor departments that they cannot provide evidence because they pay wages in cash. Mr. Edmund Wong, Deputy President, the government's governance is crucial for Hong Kong's future. Every policy measure would affect people's livelihood. So the government must be pragmatic in catering to the then need of society and work for the maximized benefits of Hong Kong's future. That's the same for labor supplementation policies. Now, when I became a legislative member, Hong Kong has just newly emerged from the pandemic, and there was a serious shortage of manpower in many trades. In my profession, accounting, it is a very high intensity working environment. Even before the pandemic, there was a serious shortage of manpower. I think Dr. Starley also remembered that. Now, during the pandemic, the situation was the worst. As I said then, the accounting profession was hiring anyone who could breathe and move. Now, because of that, the government has allowed for importation of professional labor through top talent scheme and other importation schemes. The accounting profession was included on the list so as to replenish the manpower. Now, time has changed. With a series of talent importation schemes launched by the government, and also the changing consumption patterns of local residents and travelers, trades which had hiring difficulties have seen the situation change. Now, in the latest policy address, the government has adjusted the labor importation policies for junior cooks and waiters, showing that the government has been listening to the trade's views. Now, tightening importation scheme cannot be careless. We must not adopt an across-the-board attitude in suspending importation of labor. We have to pay attention to the actual situation. Now, like Ms. Lee and KWOK said, illegal working is a serious problem in Hong Kong. Now, in the past, illegal workers would stay in Hong Kong to work for a long time. Now they are performing illegal employment on a per-visit basis. So we need to be more vigilant against travelers who come to Hong Kong on a suspicious model or pattern. We need to enhance our vigilance and also show our commitment to cracking down on illegal employment. Not only is this illegal, there are many situations where the quality of work is poor and there is no way to claim compensation. Now, economic policies are for improving people's livelihood and improving the economy. All labor policies should be premised upon protection of local workers and local workers' welfare. So I urge the government to pay close attention to the changing situations in our labor markets and protect our local workers. I shall submit. Dr. Junis Ho. Deputy President, now coincidentally, this motion is also similar to Mr. Tang Fei's written question on how to protect the employment prospects of local workers. Now, Mr. Tang Fei asked about the number of applications for supplementary labor in 2023. And in April, 3 employment centers were closed by the Labor Department. What was the reason? The employment rate has shown a rebounding trend this year. So how many cases were received by the Job Employment Center of the Labor Department? So I think the direction of the motion is correct. We need to protect local employment and prioritize local workers. No one would dispute that. Now, we are working towards the same goal, but with different methods. And it seems that all the data are flimsy. We can't grasp the actual situation comprehensively. Now, we have the total number of manpower shortage. That's the number of workers we need. We lack workers for capital works projects, and there is greater demand than supply. However, it is very hard to tell which set of figure is true. For example, transportation sector, there is a manpower shortage. How many workers do we need in the taxi, bus, and public minibus and railway sectors? What's the employment situation in these sectors? What is the demographic demographic structure of the labor force. How many workers are under the age of 30? How many experienced workers we have? Well, we don't have those figures. What's the shortage of workers under the age of 30? What about workers in their 40s, 50s, 60s? What about the succession? What is the picture on retirements? Well, I believe we need guidance from the Labor Department. Construction industry, steel fixer, plasterers, electricians, home renovation. How many workers do we need? Everyone say there is a big gap, but we don't know the extent of the gap. On one hand, we are discussing this. On the other hand, we are still asking questions. Without statistics, how can we debate the issue effectively? Now, I support the motion, but it is very underwhelming in terms of implementation. Catering, what's the number of shortage? Waiters, kitchen workers, cleaners, chef, sous chef, junior cooks, dim sum chef, dishwashers, no figures for them. We always talk about big data, artificial intelligence, but we don't have even basic intelligence. How are we supposed to work with these figures? So we're now strengthening the collaboration between executive and legislative branches. You need to give me the figures, and then I can help you. Like Chinese medicine, we need to ask questions and feel the pulse. But you are now just prescribing the medicine without doing all these. That will not work. This is the last motion debate of this term of the LegCo. I hope that in the next Legislative Council, the government will be more candid about the data so that we can ask accurate questions and that we are not discussing for discussion's sake, that we are looking for an answer and looking for an effective medicine. Thank you.
Mr. Brave Chan. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I also thank members as well as officials for speaking. The original motion comes from Mr. Wai-keung, with the amender being Mr. Tien, on firmly upholding the safeguard of the employment priority for local employees. As President Xi said, employment is crucial to society and people's lives. If we can accord employment priority to local employees, is something that we all want to see, not just in Hong Kong, but in any other international metropolis in the world. We see eye to eye in this regard. The Chief Executive has put in place measures to accord priority to local workers. The Secretary has also said that the main principle or under importation of labor is to first ensure employment priority for local employees, to which I agree strongly. We would like to see more investment, more jobs. We want to ensure that priority is given to local employees, especially graduates from universities or elementary workers. The latest unemployment rate from June to August is 3.7%. Unemployment rate has increased by 1.6%. Compared to other jurisdictions in terms of employment or the employment, the environment, we fare quite well. But for all employees, whether you are university graduates or workers of different levels, we want to see more job opportunities. We want the economy to grow. We want employment to be supported. We want businesses to thrive. Well, employment priority for local employees is important to people's lives. If there is someone who is in stable employment in a household, then there is basic protection. Well, we have CPPCC as well as NPC delegates. We all agree that employment is a key area. Candidates running for head of states in different countries also accord priority to employment. I suggest to the Security Bureau that they should step up their efforts against illegal employment. If there are successful cases, operations, it should be made public. For those who plan to come to Hong Kong to work illegally, they will be deterred by the information. We also need to work with different jurisdictions to combat the problem at source. We need to put in place stronger deterrents in the countries where the illegal workers come from. We need to accord priority to local workers and create a better working environment. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, Mr. Wai-keung, you may now speak on the amendment. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I thank Mr. Michael TIEN for moving the amendment. It has enriched my original motion. It includes vigorously tackling refusal to hire qualified local workers without reasonable grounds or dismissal. He also added increasing the penalties to enhance the deterrence effect. I support the amendments. I thank Mr. TIEN for keeping the part about mechanism for freezing importation in my original motion. I've been listening to the views of members. This is a frank exchange. We're all pragmatic. I haven't been labeled in any way in relation to the freezing mechanism. We all understand that an across-the-board freezing is infeasible. Different sectors have a different situation. They have a different unemployment rate. We want to fight for fairness for laborers, but we don't want a situation in which when there is a high unemployment rate and still the labor importation goes on, then the government will be put in a very unfavorable position. But we do not accept a scheme without any ceiling or one without any freezing mechanism. Previously, there was a series of enhanced improvement measures to accord priority to local laborers. Illegal behavior will be subject to vigorous administrative sanction. For those who abuse the program, they are not allowed to make another application within 6 months. There is also a case when the person involved was banned from applying again in 2 years. Well, but for the sanction, it's only 2 years. After 2 years, an application will be made again. There is room to tighten, to enhance the penalty to ensure that those who abuse the system will not be allowed to do it again. This will also serve as a deterrence effect. In addition to enhancing inspections on the manning ratio, attention should be put to working hours. As I said, there's some working hours have been shortened. The basis has been turned into casual. So local workers are working very short hours, earning very little. Employment policy is heavily related to people's lives. Yes, there is the saying that an additional $30 billion will be earmarked to add more projects to improve the employment situation in construction workers. We would like to see more efforts to help people change their jobs, more subsidies, say, for example, in relation to retraining or reemployment. In trades, say, residential care, airport, electricians, drivers, more effort should be put into it to help with the recruitment situation. You may say that everyone preferred young workers, but a lot of work has been devoted into unleashing women, silverhead in the labor force. But if the measures are not effective, then we have ourselves to blame. In relation to a series of midterm measures to support local employees, I would like to say that in the catering businesses, technology is used to serve food or cleaning or other areas. It is crucial to consider how to help elementary posts to transform. I ask different departments to put in place forward-looking strategies to help the labor force adapt to the changes in technology. Undersecretary for Security. Madam Deputy, first of all, I thank the mover, Mr. Wai-keung, and the amender, Mr. Michael TIEN. I thank members who have spoken for their valuable input. The Chief Executive in the 2025 policy address emphasizes that efforts will be strengthened to combat illegal employment so as to protect the employment of local workers. In September this year, the Security Bureau set up the Interdepartmental Task Force to step up coordination. Members of the task force are from the Labor Welfare Department, Labor and Welfare Bureau, Education Bureau, Transport and Logistics Bureau, Immigration Department, Police, Labor Department, and the Transport Department. I will outline the key work areas of the government in combating illegal employment in reply to members' comments. The government has adopted a multi-pronged strategy to combat illegal employment. This includes stepping up intelligence collection. Law enforcement agencies have proactively collecting intelligence and conducting joint operations. In the third quarter of this year, says August, the Immigration Department has carried out 3,500 enforcement actions for combating illegal employment. Monthly average increased by about 18% over the last quarter. In August alone, the Immigration Department, in collaboration with other departments, mounted a series of operations during which 1,800 locations were inspected and a total of 173 illegal workers and 67 employers were arrested. The operations were widely publicized to achieve a deterrent effect. In relation to the use of online platforms to recruit and arrange for illegal employment, the department conducts constant cyber patrols. It will take full enforcement action by decoy operation against any person who is found using social media platforms or instant messaging software to organize, arrange, and abet anyone to engage in serious offenses such as illegal employment. For example, in September, the Immigration Department noticed through cyber patrol that some mainland photographers and makeup artists were promoting on social media platforms that they could provide services here in Hong Kong. After investigation, the Immigration Department conducted enforcement actions and arrested a total of 10 persons, including 8 mainland illegal workers. Besides, the labor inspectors of the department will, under the power conferred by the Immigration Ordinance, continue to check the proof of identity of employees on site and records of employees kept by employees during regular workplace inspections to deter illegal employment of workers. Suspected cases will be referred to law enforcement agencies. On increase in penalty. It is a serious offense to engage in illegal employment. Employers, illegal workers, as well as aiders and abettors of illegal employment will be liable to prosecution in accordance with the Immigration Ordinance Cap 115. Illegal immigrants and non-refoulement claimants, etc., taking employment, whether paid or unpaid, or establishing or joining in any business will receive a penalty of a fine of $50,000 and an imprisonment of 3 years upon conviction. In addition, anyone who breached the condition of stay by taking employment, whether paid or unpaid, is a crime. The penalty is a fine of $50,000 and an imprisonment of 2 years upon conviction. The penalty is the same for aiders and abettors. For employers, the government amended the immigration ordinance in 2021 by increasing the penalty on employing prohibited employees. For employers employing unemployable persons such as illegal immigrants, overstayers, and persons who have been denied entry, the maximum penalty was significantly increased from $350,000 and 3 years imprisonment to a fine of $500,000 and 10 years imprisonment to reflect the gravity of the offences. The directors, secretaries, partners, etc. of the company concerned may also bear criminal liability. The High Court has laid down sentencing guidelines that the employer of an illegal worker should be given an immediate custodial sentence. An employer was convicted for employing an unemployable person and was sentenced to an imprisonment of 19 months in February last year. The tariff reflects the gravity of the offense. Members expressed concerns Members have asked questions in relation to tariffs. The court will draw reference to guidelines taking into account mitigation matters, circumstances of the case before deciding on the sentence. In general, a sentence of imprisonment will be dished out. There are guidelines set down by the High Court that employer, upon conviction for employing an unemployable person, will be given an immediate custodial sentence. If it's a repeated offender, the sentence will be enhanced. If necessary, the Department of Justice will apply for a review of the sentence. On collaboration with mainland authorities, the Immigration Department and mainland authorities maintained liaison intelligence exchange under a notification mechanism. Under the current mechanism, the Immigration Department will regularly pass information on mainland residents who have been convicted of criminal offences here in Hong Kong, including those engaged in illegal employment, to mainland authorities. Depending on the circumstances, the mainland authorities will not issue exit endorsements to these persons for a period of 2 to 5 years in order to prevent them from revisiting Hong Kong for illegal activities. In addition, if it is found by the Immigration Department that someone is allegedly arranging for illegal workers to work in Hong Kong using mainland online platforms, the Immigration Department will exchange intelligence with mainland authorities and urge them to arrange with the relevant platforms for taking appropriate actions, such as taking down the posts involved. On publicity and education, the government has been actively conducting publicity and education through different channels, including press conferences, social media, promotional leaflets, to enable the public to understand the criminal liability for employing illegal workers, to raise awareness. The Immigration Department has deployed officers and promotional vehicles to black spots from time to time to distribute "Don't Employ Illegal Workers" leaflets to employers and provide them with information of the identifying lawfully employable person and remind them to check the Hong Kong ID card of job seekers. Meanwhile, the Immigration Department steps up the dissemination of information through its official accounts of social media platforms such as Xiaohongshu, Weibo, and Instagram on the results of latest enforcement operations against illegal employment and the message of employing illegal workers is an offense. This can facilitate easier access to the relevant information by employers, local residents, and mainland visitors so that they will not break the law. To highlight the importance attached by the government on combating illegal employment, on the day when the policy address was delivered, the Immigration Department rolled out a dedicated hotline to report illegal workers, 3861500, to facilitate reports of cases. The department will publicize the hotline extensively and actively follow up on reports. Over the 2 weeks since the launch of the hotline, the Immigration Department has received over 100 reports. We ask the public to report cases to related to illegal employment. We will also make arrangements to enhance, to raise the awareness of not employing illegal workers in the property management companies. A number of members have expressed suggestions in relation to our measures. The task force will closely monitor the situation and formulate overall strategies in response to the circumstances to protect local employment.
鼓掌。
Undersecretary for Labor and Welfare. Madam Deputy, once again, I thank Mr. Wai-keung for his motion. I also thank Mr. Michael TIEN for his amendment. I'm also grateful to the many members who shared their valuable views on keep putting local workers first in employment. Just then, the Undersecretary for Security has responded to the point on cracking down on illegal employment to protect local workers, and now give a consolidated reply to the other point. As members said, labor policy is closely related to people's well-being. As I said in my opening remarks, our labor policy has always been focused on developing the local workforce supplemented by imported workers. Our 2023 manpower projection shows that in terms of our labor crunch, by 2028, we won't have enough workers to fill all the jobs. Our overall labor crunch will expand to 180,000 people, given the aging population and the shortage of workers, while we put our local workers first. In 2023, the government enhanced the labor importation mechanisms. Those labor import schemes have been working well, and they're serving the intended purposes. Those schemes helped many employers, including SMEs, find workers to meet their operational needs so that their business can continue to grow or remain in operation. The government sticks to the local workers first principle. The ESLS, or the Enhanced Supplementary Labor Scheme, launched a new series of enhancements, including channels for people to report abuse, and for job ads, employers have to put up their names. This is to enhance transparency. And there are also special inspections to make sure that the employers hiring imported workers continuously meet the manning ratio in terms of hiring local workers versus imported workers. And when it comes to risk management, we also require employers to submit information on the imported workers and local employees, including the manning ratio. And when the same applications come in within 6 months from the same employers, those applications are rejected. We also strengthen the local hiring requirements to prevent and crack down on bogus employment. Now, based on the latest situation in the catering sector, on the 10th of September, new requirements came in. Last month, the chief executive also announced enhancements in his policy address with targeted measures to crack down on abuse. Starting from the 18th of September, for junior cooks and servers, the local hiring had to be 6 weeks instead of 4. And every week, the employers had to join the job fairs organized by the Labor Department. They had to meet the job seekers in person. For job employers who fail to meet these requirements, the Labor Department will reject their applications. The Labor Department has also adopted a more rigorous manning ratio for those two posts. Instead of a 2.1 ratio for all the workers under a single employer, that manning ratio will apply to specific posts, meaning when someone tries to bring in junior cooks and servers, they need 2 local servers or junior cooks for every imported worker that employer tries to bring in. Now, this will enhance this employment priority for local workers. Now, for specific employers, they fail to meet the requirements. The government adopted a zero-tolerance approach to abuse. The Labor Department has received complaints, and the LD has investigated the cases for abuse where imported workers were hired to replace local workers. Administrative sanctions were adopted. We encourage workers to come forward with complaints, and we follow up every single complaint seriously. As Mr. Wai-keung and Mr. Michael TIEN said, local employers prefer imported workers in many ways. They think imported workers are more resilient. That's what employers have told us. But I say Aren't local workers just as good? We have the Lion Rock spirit. Local workers have their edge. They may be older, but they are more experienced. That's how they make themselves employable, even though they may be older. So we will step up on training and retraining to help local workers find work. Now, the Employees Retraining Board provide market-oriented and job-linked training courses. That's to help local workers enhance their employability and stay competitiveness. Every year, the ERB provides more than 100,000 training spots involving more than 700 courses covering 28 industries and generic skills programs. The ERB is going through an overhaul. They're enhancing their positioning and role to provide skills-based training programs and strategies for the local population. In the medium and long term, the ERB will focus on the research of jobs so that they get a sense of the trends in the skills needed, and then they can come up with a skills-based training strategy and course hierarchy so that they can provide upskilling or reskilling courses. The Labor Department also provides a full spectrum of employment services. There are all kinds of job fairs to help job seekers find work. And there are also targeted employment programs for specific groups. Some members argue that labor impulse schemes can provide the manpower employers need, but more flexibility is needed and procedures can be streamlined. So for the ESLS, the government will review this arrangement in the future. Some members argue that given the rising jobless rate, they call for a mechanism to pause the labor impulse schemes or pause the import once the jobless rate hits a certain level. And other members argue for a pause on the labor impulse scheme for certain sectors. We are against this broad brush approach in approaching labor importation schemes. For the same sector, the demand for different positions may be different. So we have to strike a balance between businesses and the need to put local workers first. The government will closely watch and assess the labor market and the manpower demand across sectors as we adjust the labor import schemes with flexibility while we put local workers first. And when there is abuse on the part of employers, employees are welcome to call 2150-6363 to report those workers. And when they come across illegal workers, as the Undersecretary for Security said, they should report those cases. Now, on data, I want to say more on this, just that Mr. Bill Tang called for more data to show us the hiring across sectors starting from the 10th of September under the ESLS. For applications for junior cooks and servers, there are 3-hour job fairs at the LD's own centers every week. Employers have to be there to meet the job seekers. This will ensure greater transparency in hiring, so that interviews are not just based on phone calls. Now, I want to share some figures. As at 30th of September, 54 organizations took part in the job fairs. They provide 1,119 vacancies, including servers, 370 such posts, junior cooks, 470, and also cleaners, dishwashers, 271 posts. There are enough employers for 143 interviews. So there were fewer interviews than vacancies. We encourage trade unions to encourage job seekers to go to our employment centers for those interviews. That LD gets in touch with every unsuccessful job seeker to find out what happened. We will find and assess whether those reasons for rejection made sense and whether their stories tallied with what the employer said. Some members wondered if we could adjust the manning ratio of 2-to-1 or if we can raise the threshold of 35 hours of work per week. As I said, the government has been closely watching the local labor market and the changes in the manpower across sectors, and we will continuously launch targeted measures as we put local workers first. Members have made suggestions, and we will dynamically adjust our measures in light of the latest situation. Now, more figures on cracking down on violations of labor importation schemes. Now, since the launch of the ESLS as of September this year, the LD has received more than 600 complaints. Now, there were violations of the ECO, OSHO, and Immigration Ordinance. We have revoked the labor importation approvals for 13 employers. So they won't be able to bring in workers for 2 years. I thank the members who have spoken. We put our heads together for a discussion. And we can see that we all share the same goal. We put local workers first. On that premise, we want to import workers to meet our labor gap. Some businesses may close down if they're short of workers. If the existing workers will also lose their jobs, the government will continue to watch the local labor market, and we will carefully consider members' views as so submit.
And I'll call upon Mr. Michael TIEN to move an amendment. President, I move my amendment. I propose the question to you that Mr. Michael TIEN's amendment be passed. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority of each of the two groups of members, that is, those returned by EC and those returned by FC and GC. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Kwok, you have 54 seconds left and the debate will come to a close. I thank the LWB for doing its job in gatekeeping. I thank members who have spoken. President sees that employment is an important project. Ensuring employment opportunities for the people is always a challenge. Well, Hong Kong's living standard is high. Even if with a job, it's difficult for you to make ends meet, let alone those without. I hope that there will be support in retraining and employment support, employment policies. I thank the support of the Liberal Party. I ask members to support my original motion. And I'll put the question to you that Mr. Wai-keung's motion as amended by Mr. Michael TIEN be passed. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the motion as amended passed.